Karla Faye Tucker, a name that once echoed through America's news headlines, a name that forced millions to confront one of the most difficult questions society can ask. Can a murderer truly change? And if they do, should that change matter when justice demands death? Born on November 18, 1959, in Houston, Texas, Karla Faye Tucker's life began in turbulence. She was the youngest of three daughters, the illegitimate child of a Houston firefighter of Greek descent, and Carolyn Moore Tucker, a free-spirited woman who drifted through life without much structure. Even as a little girl, Karla stood out. She was lively, curious, and full of energy. But the warmth of childhood never lasted long. Her home was broken by arguments, addiction, and neglect. When her parents divorced, Karla and her sisters were shuffled back and forth, caught between a father who couldn't control them and a mother whose wild, partying lifestyle quickly became their normal. By the time most children were learning multiplication tables, Karla was learning something very different. At 8 years old, she tried marijuana for the first time. At 12, she was using harder drugs. And before she even reached high school, she had become sexually active. Her mother didn't discourage it. She brought Karla along to adult parties, concerts, and biker gatherings. Soon, Karla wasn't just attending, she was participating. By her teenage years, she was traveling with bands, sleeping in cars, and surviving by doing whatever she had to. Eventually, she started selling her body to pay for her drug addiction. It was a chaotic, destructive world, and Karla was trapped inside it. Then, in her early 20s, she met a man named Danny Garrett. Danny was older, tougher, and lived a life of crime and drugs. The two bonded over their addictions and shared recklessness. They became inseparable, partners in every sense of the word. Through Danny, Karla also met a man named Jerry Dean, who was married to Karla's best friend, Sean Jackson. Jerry was a rough, motorcycle-loving man with a reputation for being abusive. Karla despised him. Over time, that hatred festered. And on a hot June night in 1983, it finally exploded. It started as a drug-fueled idea to steal parts from Jerry Dean's motorcycle. Karla and Danny had been using for days. Their minds were hazy, their emotions raw. They decided to break into Jerry's apartment while he slept. Using a spare key belonging to Sean, they quietly entered the dark bedroom. But the plan quickly went wrong. Jerry woke up. A struggle began. Danny grabbed a hammer and began bludgeoning Jerry. Karla, in a frenzy, picked up a heavy tool, a pickaxe, and struck him. When it was over, Jerry lay dead. But then they saw something they didn't expect. Another person in the room. A woman, Deborah Thornton, was hiding under the covers, terrified. She wasn't supposed to be there. But in that moment, caught in the chaos, Karla attacked her too. Deborah pleaded for her life, but Karla kept swinging the pickaxe. Later, in chilling detail, she told friends how she felt an orgasmic thrill with each strike, words that would haunt her for the rest of her life. When the night ended, 2 innocent people were dead, and Karla Faye Tucker had crossed a line she could never return from. Police found the bodies soon after. The crime scene was gruesome, the weapons still lodged in one of the victims. But solving the case didn't take long. A few days later, a man named Doug Garrett, Danny's brother, went to the police. He said the couple had bragged about the murders while high. Detective J.C. Mosier convinced Doug to wear a hidden recorder to capture Karla's confession. On tape, she spoke freely about the killings, laughing at times, showing no remorse. That recording sealed her fate. Karla and Danny Garrett were arrested and charged with capital murder. Their trial began in April 1984, and from the start, the courtroom was filled with tension. Karla, just 23 years old, appeared calm and detached. The prosecution painted her as a cold-blooded killer, a woman who had not only committed murder, but taken pleasure in it. The evidence was overwhelming. The recording tape, the murder weapon, the brutality of the crime. The jury didn't take long. They found her guilty, and when it came time to decide her punishment, they ruled that the murders were deliberate, calculated, and showed she posed a continuing threat to society. Karla Faye Tucker was sentenced to death by lethal injection, the first woman in Texas to receive that sentence since the Civil War. Danny Garrett received the same sentence, but died in prison years later from liver disease before his execution could be carried out. Karla's early days on death row were not much different from the life she had been living, restless, angry, and lost. But something began to change. As the years passed, she started reading the Bible. At first, it was out of boredom, but soon she became deeply absorbed. She said she felt something she had never experienced before: peace. Over time, she claimed to have found faith in Jesus Christ, describing herself as born again. She began to show real remorse for what she had done. She spoke to ministers, counselors, and even journalists, not to make excuses, but to express genuine sorrow. Karla became a completely different person: calm, polite, gentle. She volunteered in prison ministries, helped other inmates find hope, and wrote letters about redemption. People who met her couldn't believe she was the same woman who once killed 2 people with a pickaxe. Her transformation caught the world's attention. Reporters visited her on death row. Churches across the country spoke about her case. And as her execution date drew closer, the question arose: should she be spared? Supporters flooded Texas with petitions for clemency. Among them were religious figures, activists, and even the Pope, John Paul II. They didn't deny her guilt, but they believed her change was real. If the purpose of punishment is rehabilitation, they asked, hadn't Karla achieved that? Her lawyers appealed her sentence all the way to the United States Supreme Court, but every motion was denied. Finally, her last hope rested with Governor George W. Bush, who had the power to grant a 30-day reprieve or commute her sentence to life in prison. Karla personally recorded a video message for the governor, pleading for mercy. She didn't beg to be free, she only asked to live out her days behind bars, continuing her ministry to others. She told Bush she was no longer the same person who committed those horrible acts. Bush, after reviewing the case, refused to intervene. He later said, "Justice is not ours to alter once the law has spoken." And so, the date was set. February 3rd, 1998, Huntsville, Texas. Outside the prison, crowds gathered, some holding candles and signs that read, "Forgive her," others chanting, "Justice for the victims." Inside, Karla Faye Tucker spent her final hours praying. When the time came, she was led into the execution chamber, calm, dressed in white, her long brown hair neatly tied back. Witnesses said she smiled softly, looked through the glass, and spoke her last words. "Yes, sir. I would like to say to all of you, the Thornton family and Jerry Dean's family, I am so sorry. I hope God will give you peace with this. And to all of you who have been my friends, thank you. I love you all, and I'm going to be face to face with Jesus now." At 6:45 p.m., the drugs began to flow. Minutes later, Karla Faye Tucker was pronounced dead. She was 38 years old. Her execution marked the first time Texas had executed a woman in more than 130 years. But more importantly, it reopened America's wounds around the death penalty. To some, it was justice finally served. To others, it was proof that the system had no room for mercy. Editorials filled newspapers. Talk shows debated endlessly. Had Texas executed a murderer or a redeemed soul? Was Karla Faye Tucker's change genuine or just convenient repentance in the face of death? Even years later, those questions still divide people. For supporters of the death penalty, her case reaffirmed a harsh truth. No matter how much a person changes, some crimes are too severe to forgive. For opponents, it showed something deeper, that redemption and transformation are real, and that execution ignores the human capacity to grow, to regret, to become better. Karla's own words, written before her death, seemed to echo both truths. I deserve to die for what I did, but I have learned that even in the darkest heart, light can enter. Today, more than 2 decades later, Karla Faye Tucker remains a symbol of both justice and grace. Her life is studied in criminology classes, discussed in documentaries, and remembered in debates about capital punishment. Her story continues to challenge society with uncomfortable questions. Should the death penalty exist in a world where people can change? Can spiritual transformation erase earthly crimes? And who gets to decide what redemption is worth? Karla's case didn't end the death penalty, but it did something powerful. It made America pause and think. It showed that even behind bars, even facing death, a person could find meaning, faith, and peace. She will forever be remembered, not only as a murderer, but also as the woman who made a nation look inward and ask, what is justice without mercy?